Good evening to everyone and greetings to all the AIWC members to our literary and cultural forum. As you all know, we have been streaming online for the last 3 years, a number of lectures on different topics, but during the month of March, we have concentrated on women and gender. And this is the third of our talks on gender issues and women. We had earlier 2 talks. One was by Lekshmi, another Lekshmi from the Institute, Dr.R.Lekshmi from the Institute of English. And she talked to us about the way gender and gets represented in media and the protection that law has for women. In our second lecture, we went to entrepreneurship and how education can become a good occupation, a kind of, I would say, something that women have lagged behind and which we need to rectify. And we had Dr. Kalyani to talk to us about edupreneurship, that is entrepreneurship and education. That was a very interesting session. And today we are looking at women from a totally different perspective. And we have Dr.R.Lekshmi from the Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala. She has been doing a lot of work, particularly in the area of gender and philosophy. She joined the Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala 4 years back, but she has a teaching experience of many years, starting with NSS College. Then she came over to Women's College for a number of years. She taught at the Institute of English Philosophy as an elective for our students. And then I think her perseverance and her hard work landed her as a faculty member of the university in the Department of Philosophy. And today she heads the department. I'm very happy that Lekshmi has really climbed up the ladder, or the women's ladder, I should say, in order to achieve this quite envious position of being the head of the Department of Philosophy at such a young age. And maybe it also talks a lot about her credentials. I was just looking at the bio note that she had sent me a few days back. And I found that she has, in fact, written academic books, chapters in edited books, 10 articles in international journals, index journals, national popular articles, e-content development materials, videos in KU Pathashala, books authored and edited, which includes, very interestingly, a book on Chinese philosophy, a guide to personal excellence and social harmony, subjectivity beyond subjectivity, post-structural interventions in 2022, film and philosophy in 2021, philosophical perspectives on hermeneutics, humanism of Vivekananda, paper presentation, invited talks, and it goes on with national and international representations in various forums. She was a research guide and continues to guide her students, already produced 10 PhDs, and she has done one postdoctoral fellow and MPhil awarded 8. She has also funded projects of the UGC. And very interestingly, one of the projects that she has done is the contributions of Swami Vivekananda to the cultural renaissance of Kerala. And she also did another one on stress management in the content of philosophy of Vivekananda. Chinese philosophy, a moral propriety for personal excellence and social harmony. So she's a wide canvas of interest, but of course rooted in philosophy and philosophical reflections. She was an invited participant for the certification program in philosophical counseling organized by the American Philosophy Practitioners Association, USA, in April, May 2020. and in 2009, an invited presenter on the place of skepticism in Quine's Naturalized Epistemology in the Interim World Philosophy Congress, New Delhi, a member of various bodies, advisory bodies. And we also share a platform on the ethics committee of the government of Kerala and the virology department. So she has, as I said, a CV that is very enviable, and I should congratulate her for having done so much in the small space of time that she has had in trying to focus on philosophy, which is not a subject that very easily becomes malleable to many of us. But one of the things that I have found, particularly when we talk about gender discrimination and gender values, is that we often forget that philosophy is a way of life. Philosophy is a thought process. Philosophy helps us to think about the world around us, about human relationships, how one interacts with another human being. Philosophy also has a history of philosophical reflections that help us to analyze what was and what is in the present moment. So we are looking at a body of intellectual thought. We are looking at a body of philosophical reflections, which are in a way mainly centered on the philosophy of life. Because when two individuals meet, the way they look at how they appreciate or they disagree with one another begins with thought, the philosophy of thought. How do they react to a particular person? And if you look at the history of philosophy, one finds we always start with a kind of notion of a thesis that is built up, and then there is an antithesis to it, and then slowly there comes a synthesis. And in the philosophy of thought, particularly with gender, what I have found interesting is that we started with this thesis of a patriarchal society, where the gendering of women seemed to be the norm rather than the exception. Then we moved on to a kind of antithesis situation in society, where we had the feminist movement, women reacting against this situation of conventionality and always subjugating the woman. So we passed through that period during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And by the time we come to the 90s, we have a totally different perspective emerging now, and it has continued. And this different perspective that we find now is the way in which we look at gender. For Simone de Beauvoir, gender was always an antithesis to sex. Gender was always seen as socially constructed and sex was biologically constructed. When we came to the feminist movement, we were talking about not differences, we were talking about equality and equity. And we were fighting for our rights. But today, there is a renewed understanding of what the female body is, why the woman has been built the way she has been, a celebration of the human's body and her reproductive rights, rather than saying that reproduction is the right of the male bastion, and to say that the woman has no decision about what to do with her body. Judith Butler is an interesting sociologist and philosopher who has emerged during the 90s and has been talking about various issues, particularly about who is afraid. One of her books, which is called Who is Afraid of Gender? Gender is something we have always been talking in terms of gender is something that is a social construct. And when you say who is afraid of this social construct, it is to say we are not, because we are creating new constructs for ourselves. So this philosophy of life, this philosophy of thinking is what has always interested me in philosophical reflections about gender. For a very long time, we thought that women would become empowered if they were economically independent. Then for some time we thought that women's participation in society and equal pay and equal rights and fighting against violence against women would really free women. But today, I think the realization has come that it is an awareness from within an understanding of what you are, that is more important, and making society aware of what you are. So this could be, we know the transgender movement, we know about the cure movement. So many different movements have come. At one time, we talked about racial disparities. Today, we no longer talk, or it is not so apparent as it was before. I think we are moving towards a society where women will be appreciated. And every year, when the UN celebrates women and talks about activating and trying to bring women to the forefront to meet the challenges of life, they are in effect talking about philosophy, the philosophy of life. And this is what Dr.R.Lekshmi perhaps is going to tell us, that philosophy is not an abstract notion, but it is a very concrete, pulsating, intellectual thought that should be brought into our society, into our thinking minds, and we should be able to understand not similarities, but differences. The deconstruction philosophy and existential philosophy have in a way contributed to this thinking of disparities and differences rather than similarities. So women are different from one another. And even when we talk about the philosophy of life, it is actually rooted in the differences that are there in women, from one group of women, one community of women, one nation of women to another nation or community of women, or you scale it down to one individual being different from another individual. So I'm opening up this platform now for Lekshmi to tell us more about this philosophy of differences, this philosophy of challenges that are there for women, the philosophy of raising an awareness of who she is, what she is, and what she can do in this world. So with these thoughts that I had when I thought about philosophical reflections, I now request Dr.R.Lekshmi to talk to us about the subject, gender and development, philosophical reflections. So over to you, Lekshmi.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for the very wonderful introduction of the theme which you have given now, and also for the nice introduction and the kind words which you spoke about me. Thank you so much, ma'am. And why I am here today maybe is perhaps only due to Javila ma'am, because she invited me and she asked me, can you speak on gender and development from a philosophical perspective? But when I joined here in this meeting, I can see people like Kamini ma'am, who actually took the role of a mentor in my life. So very nice to meet my friends, my mentors, and my well-wishers, and my students have also joined this meeting. Anyway, so without wasting much time, let me go straight away, go to the presentation. But before that, let me share my screen. Hope you can, hope the screen is visible. Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So the very title is Gender and Development, Philosophical Reflections. And what I have tried to do in this presentation is why a philosophical intervention
Lakshmi,
is...
can we have a full screen?
Full screen. Okay.
Yeah, full
I will put it in the slideshow mode. Okay. Okay. Is it okay now? Okay, ma'am. So why a philosophical intervention is required to address gender issues, and especially when it comes to the question of gender and development. First of all, I would like to define what is gender and then define what is development. And whenever we speak about gender and development, why a philosophical intervention or a theoretical intervention becomes so necessary. So philosophy is, in a sense, I completely agree with ma'am that philosophy is something which is so close to human life. Philosophy is a part of human life. But in order that philosophy becomes a way of life, we need to have a theoretical foundation for it. And always philosophy is doing some sort of a theoretical intervention in matters or issues that are or problems vexing problems of our society. So whenever we do a kind of a theoretical intervention, I would like to say that it's a kind of a philosophical intervention, because philosophy perhaps questions the existing frameworks of thought. For example, if we take the question of gender or the issues relating to gender and development, we have a lot of existing paradigms, we have a lot of existing frameworks, theoretical frameworks. So we go on practicing, or we go on doing things with these existing frameworks and paradigms. But unless and until an anomaly appears, we never question those frameworks. We never enter into debates or critiques. But once we enter into debates and critiques of the existing frameworks, or once we make a deconstructive reading of gender, we will get a renewed perspective on gender, and that may result in some sort of a revolution, I can say, as what has been called by our Thomas Kuhn, a philosopher of science. So paradigm shifts occur not only in sciences, but everywhere paradigm shifts occur. And that amounts to some sort of a revolution, maybe a silent revolution or an ideological revolution. So that will in fact lead to alternative policies, and that will definitely give way to alternative ways or new ways of looking at what is development, and what is equality, what is equity, etc., etc. So let me first define what is sex and what is gender. And at the outset, I would like to share with you that whatever views I have expressed in these slides, I have taken mostly from Simone de Beauvoir, and also a rereading of Beauvoir by Butler. So, and in between, of course, I try to make a critique of their views, and perhaps when Butler's into sessions with Beauvoir, how she interprets Beauvoir. There, I take some critiques. So first, sex. Sex is a classification assigned at birth based on observable characteristics. So sex is something which we assign, or which we are eager to assign at the time of the birth of a baby. But then what is gender? Gender, of course, is how we feel ourselves to be. I don't want to give the very normal way of defining gender as a social construct, because we are already fed up with that definition, I think. So I would like to say that uh, uh, gender is how we feel ourselves to be and live as bodies in the world in relation to masculine, feminine, or various other qualities. So how to be means that becomes an ontological question. So that may lead to some sort of an epistemological question also. And live as bodies in the world. So a kind of a Heideggerian way of the relationship between the I and the world. So how it happens. So how can we address this in relation to the question of gender? And how can we connect it with development? Because today we always hear about what is called gender and development. And here I would like to mention that in any discussion on human development, gender development is one of the most pertinent things that we need to address. Or without an inclusion of gender development, we can't say that the society is developing or there is human development. But the question is whether our gender is determined by biology, social, or cognitive factors. So these are things which most of us know, but only to reach out to Boer and Butler that I simply go through these fundamental questions or discussions. That is whether the gender is determined by biology, by our physiological factors, by our anatomical structures, or is it something which is like a socio-cultural construct that the society, of course, imposes on us, or is it the other way? That is, it's a kind of a cognition, which is perhaps more self-driven. Something like it is not that the society, it is not the society that is imposing or that is constructing gender on us, but we only impose it on ourselves. So all these questions lead to, or these kind of perspectives lead to a different or varied set of ontological questions, epistemological questions, value norms, etc. So here, what is more important is the question of social construction, where it is a question of heteronomy, or when we come to cognitive, it's not constructed, but it is constituted. So the cognitive approach is more self-driven, and there we can say that we have more autonomy, and it's not a question of heteronomy. So what is it actually? Now, why gender is important in the discussions on development? So in defining power, privileges, and possibilities that some people have and some people do not have in a given society, the question, what is development, becomes important. See, we know already that Sustainable Development Goals 2030, so you of the UN, it always stresses on the very important aspect that whenever we speak about development, we have to see that we highlight or we keep as the goals of our development, as the pole stars of our development, what's called equity, equality, then non-violence, respectful of human rights, etc. Only if we have such a society, we can claim that we are truly making development. So without this all inclusivity, there can't be a true sense of what's called development. So I would like to bring the issue of gender in this context of development as if it is a all-inclusive notion, a kind of a open-ended, transparent, democratic notion or concept. So if we need to have a development in its true sense, that should help us to achieve progress towards equality and freedom from discrimination. That's why, because we can say that the Gender and Development Program, I was searching for its definition and I could see one of the definitions which goes like this. It's defined as the perspective and process that is participatory, empowering, equitable, sustainable, free from violence, respectful of human rights, supportive, self-determination, and actualization of human potentials. So where the human includes every person, each and every person, where there is no discrimination in terms of either sex, caste, gender, or anything for that matter. So whether it is possible or not is the question. Or if we are we achieving such a kind of an all-inclusive development? If not, why? And if we are to achieve it, how can we achieve it? So personally, I believe philosophy always goes to the root of the matter. And philosophers believe in what's called root and branch reform. And that is why we can say that in philosophy, perspectivism becomes so important. And in my personal view, gender is nothing but a perspective. Or if we are so particular that we need to have an ism in order to address what's called gender, it can be better brought under an ism called perspectivism. So, what does it mean to say, first of all, that someone belongs to a gender? Is it a human nature? So, the normativity of gender models comes here. So, if belonging to gender is an essential part of being human, then nobody can escape gender altogether. In fact, so here I would like to, ma'am was also sharing with us. That is, Butler, of course, writes a very beautiful paper called "Who is Afraid of Gender?" And there also she says, for people with a fixed mindset, it's frightening, the idea that we can change reality, transform reality to be more open, inclusive. It's just an assault on their order. So there are, of course, two kinds of people or two sets of people that we can find in our society. Those who are so hard and fast in their perspectives and in their conceptions of gender or being a woman or being a man, etc. And those who are always ready or open to change their mindset and welcome new perspectives and welcome new alternative models, etc. So, can we say that whether those who have got such a kind of a fixed mindset are they or do they have a false generalization? Anyway, since I want to speak from a philosophical angle, of course, we can say that they are the essentialists. So they belong to the class of essentialists. But there are people who reject that any properties that one has to necessarily possess. There are any properties that I have to possess or another person has to possess, being a man or being a woman. So they are the anti-essentialists. So this is basically the bipolar distinction between those who have the fixed mindsets and those who are very, very flexible and open-ended. So with this brief introduction, let me move on to the very famous quotation by Simone de Beauvoir. Of course, everyone knows this. And my presentation rather will be nothing but an attempt to analyze this notion of what does it mean to become. And for that, I should clearly state that the views here, which I have presented here, are not entirely my own. I have taken a lot from Judith Butler. And in collecting those materials, my dear research scholar, Bhumi, who has joined this meeting, I think she has really helped me a lot. I feel I should share that, okay. And my research scholar, another research scholar, Avnish, has also joined. Of course, they have inspired me like anything in doing these kind of presentations. Okay. So let me move on to that quotation. One is not born, rather one becomes a woman. So what does this term becomes mean when Brewer uses this particular term? Because it is this term, this is becoming a woman. I say becoming a woman. So this one is assigned a sex at the time of birth, that one is a boy or a girl, but this girl becomes a woman or this boy becomes a man. Especially this girl becomes a woman. So what does it mean to say that one becomes a woman? It's here that the question comes whether it is socially constructed or it is something that that I impose upon myself. Being a woman, can I say that is it so that I become a woman? Is it my choice? So the question of choice comes, freedom comes. And Simone de Beauvoir, we know she was an intellectual companion of Sartre, and of course the Sartrean ideas have really influenced her. But when we read or reread Simone de Beauvoir, and her very famous statement in 2024, what kind of a meaning that we have to take, and how can we reread Simone de Beauvoir, especially in this context of gender and development. Okay, so this is my problem, or this is my issue. So the term female designates a fixed self-identical corporeal set of facts. The woman designates a variety of connotations, so through which those facts acquire cultural meaning. Now, what is gender? Of course, gender is, of course, I personally believe it may be understood as a modality of taking on a process of interpreting the body, giving it a cultural form. Now, why at the outset, when I tried to define gender, of course, I am using this notion of body, of course, maybe the Butlerian way of defining it. But whenever we talk about this gender, about a woman, why we are talking about the body? That is an important philosophical question, I personally believe, because when I say that I am a woman, what does this I mean? So that is something which is very important. Am I a body, or am I consciousness, or can I, or is there a dualism of body and mind, or whether I need to take a psychoanalytical approach, or whether I need to take a Cartesian approach where I as a consciousness, or as a thinking being, or as a cogito, whether I exist, or whether I have got a disembodied existence, in what way I have to explain all these things, or I have to consider myself. So because without the question of what am I, or without analyzing the question of what is identity, I think we can't address a problem relating to gender. And this is where philosophy becomes very important. And I think that only takes us, or leads us to the root of the problem. And only through such kind of an introspection, I would like to say, on the question of what am I, or what my body is, or when I say that I'm the body, what does I really mean? So only through some contemplations on such questions, that a renewed interest, or a kind of a renewed understanding on this, or a perspectival change will come. And only that will, in fact, solve the gender issues, or solve the discriminatory issues to a great extent. This is my personal opinion. Okay. Now, gender must be understood as a modality. Okay, it's not a question of accessing to a fixed ontological status in which one would be a born woman, but appropriating, interpreting, reinterpreting it, so it goes on like this. So how to so what does it mean to become a woman? So one is born as a girl. So how does this girl becomes a woman? So woman. So this is perhaps what is being very beautifully analyzed and discussed by Boer. So the verb become is a consequential ambiguity, says Butler. So is gender a cultural construction imposed upon identity, or does it also involve a process of constructing ourselves? So here I am reminded of, in fact, Foucault, because whenever we discuss about these thinkers, or an attempt to deconstruct things like a gender, or the words, when we use the words become in a woman, uh, uh, thinkers like Foucault also comes in. See, when Foucault was discussing about power, he says power is not something negative, but it's also something which is positive. Body is not subjugated, but it's also active, says Foucault. And we know that these people, that is Butler and Foucault, they of course share a lot of, not many ideas, because they are all post-structuralist thinkers. So here it's not, they never believe in a fixed, predefined entity, like something like a consciousness, or something like a Cartesian cogito. They always want to free themselves from these fixed notions, and I think it's here that the fluid notion of gender comes in into way. So to become a woman is a project, in fact. But the question is it a voluntaristic project? And it's here that we need analysis. So is gender constructed in a phallogocentric language, or which precedes and determines the subject itself? Or does the cultural system unilaterally inscribe gender upon the body, in which case the body would be a passive medium and the subject subjected? So this is one of the important questions that we have to read or reinterpret when we try to understand what does it mean to become a woman. So Boer's position and perhaps the challenges to the gender theory, let us see. So to what extent sorry that I have added a lot of questions, because personally I believe in philosophy we have to raise a lot of questions, because always these questions make us think. It's not that in any lecture on philosophical topics, it shall never be a monologue. It can be dialogues or can be debates, because whenever we raise such questions, we can think about them. We can have collective ideas. Of course, we can share those ideas, so that at the end of the day, we may come up with some newer ideas or some alternative perspectives that will really help us or enliven us. So this is my personal opinion. So to what extent the construction of gender is self-reflexive process? In what way we become our genders? So gender entails a reinterpretation of the existential doctrine of choice. So as I have already told you, whenever we discuss, try to analyze this Boerian concept of statements, of course, it has got an existential framework. So, and freedom and choice are some of the important notions that come under existentialism. So, the contention that we somehow choose our gender posits an ontological issue. So, do we really choose gender? Then, who am I? Do I exist first and then I choose gender, or in my choosing gender, I choose myself? What? How is it? So it's a very difficult and intricate question to answer, but that becomes one of the key issues that we need to address when we discuss about this question of how we choose our gender, or how I construct my gender. So do we stand outside of the framework and then choose gender, or if we are immersed in gender, and how to understand the phrase choosing one's gender? So this is highly problematic. This is a way of problematizing, philosophically problematizing the issue of gender, I think. So a choosing agent prior to chosen gender. That's the Cartesian position. So Descartes, of course, is the father of modern Western philosophy. His fundamental philosophical position is very simple. That is, he says mind is diametrically opposed to body. That is, we are disembodied souls also, and the mind or consciousness is something which is a fixed entity. So he's an essentialist, we can say. Descartes is an essentialist. So if we are to free ourselves from the Cartesian ego, it's important to understand what is a soul and what is a body in Simone de Beauvoir's articulation. So this question becomes very important. So when we make a further step, we can understand that, in fact, being the companion of Sartre, perhaps, or maybe due to their conversations, Boer has taken much from Sartre. So for Sartre, body is not a static phenomenon, but a directional force and a mode of desire. Body is lived and experienced as the context for all human strivings. Though not yet realized, all humans strive after possibilities. So whenever we speak about this Sartre or Heidegger, we can even, for that matter, Heidegger also, So Hussein, he says, has got an infinite number of possibilities. And Sartre also, of course, says the human being, a man is situated in facticity, but of course we can go beyond that facticity to transcendence. But what's that level of transcendence? Of course, that never makes it so clear. But human bodies, perhaps he says, it's the context for the lived body is the context for all human strivings. So Boer is taking this idea, perhaps, or sharing this idea, I would like to say, with Sartre. So her becoming gender is an extension and a concretization of Sartre's formulations. So here Boer says, I highlighted that statement, we never know our sex outside of its expression as gender. So this is very important. So we know that sex is not the same as gender. But where does this meeting point or this misidentification or misrepresentation, where does this happen? What's the origin of this gender, or what are the origins? So if we try to speak in the Nietzschean lines, we are not interested perhaps in the origin, but we are interested in the origins. Okay, so how to understand it? So that becomes very, very important. So these questions are not, see, this gender issue is not an issue which is for the other people, it's an issue for me also. So when I consider myself as a woman, from where does this notion of my feeling as a woman, from where does it come? So this notion of a gendered body, from where does it come? So that question becomes very, very important. So the ontological problem here is we become our genders, but we become them from a place which we cannot found, which cannot be said to exist. So it doesn't have a root or doesn't have any foundations. So from where does it occur? So that itself is sufficient enough, perhaps, to deconstruct the very notion of saying that gender is something which is natural, or we can also say that, put it like this, that gender is something which we have constructed. So if anything is a construct, of course we can also deconstruct it, there's no doubt. So here goes the ontological aspect of it, and here goes the and we have to I think direct our thinking and our perspectives in those lines, I believe. So gender is not originated, whereas I'm echoing the Nietzschean way of thinking. So in some point of time, but the originating activities incessantly taking place. So it is something which is so mysterious, of course. And how does it happen? So what does it mean to choose gender? So if we are all existential subjects, there's no doubt. I as an individual, I have got concrete existence in this world. So when I'm existing here, if I speak in the Sartrean line, of course, I can say that I'm condemned to be free. So whenever we speak about freedom, the question of choice also comes. But what does it mean to choose gender? Am I choosing gender? So how am I choosing gender? So we choose gender incessantly, maybe in a pre-reflective consciousness. Again, that's a term which we are taking from Sartre. It's a subtle strategic process, rarely manifesting to reflective understanding. Most of the time, actually, this is happening. And I think whenever we read Butler also, we can understand that Butler always is, it's very famous, all of us know here. That is, whenever a child is born, of course, we are eager enough to make what is called sex assignment. And if it is a girl, of course, we choose just toys and, of course, such colors and give that as the gifts to that baby girl. Why? So maybe from that very moment, this kind of a consciousness is operating in us, this kind of a thought process is on, this kind of a perspectival attitude it's being inbuilt in us. So without applying my intellect or my reflection, even in a pre-reflective, in a pre-judgmental, in a pre-cognitive, or in a pre-logical state of being, of course, this gender is incessantly, this is making its way in my being or in my making, I can say. So it's not a radical project of creation, but it's a tacit project to renew one's history in its own terms. So what about a question of gender freedom. So I haven't got any freedom to choose my gender. So this becomes the existential problem, and I believe this is the important problem in any discussion on philosophy of gender. So Beaver perhaps suggests that the constraining norms work to subdue the exercise of gender freedom. So can we exist in our society by transcending the established gender norms? So a radical, ontological, or metaphysical dislocation is perhaps happening here. Because when I say that I'm a woman, of course, I'm attached to that. Maybe I'm attached to that, my body, or even in my consciousness that is imprinted. So how can I transcend those norms? So I need to, shall I need to make a dislocation or a metaphysical dislocation in that sense? Then how is it possible? So how to reread the subject and the other? So here I take, in order to explain more philosophically how Buer analyzes this, because we can always philosophically we can analyze Simone de Beauvoir only through her very pertinent concepts like immanence and transcendence. They are, of course, in existential notions, but I think first we need to understand what is the other also. And there goes the another famous quotation of Simone de Beauvoir, where she says the man is the subject and she is the other. So women as bodies and men as disembodied self. So in any discussions on a philosophy of feminism, we know that what has happened in the patriarchal mindset of philosophical thinking, not only philosophical thinking, but also literary studies, history, or anything for that matter, or art, or anything for that matter, always there came a tendency to identify women with the bodies and the soul with the men. So always the men were considered as subjects. So who is the woman? The woman is, because when I say man or woman, these become constructs. So now we ascribe gender to that, and this gendered body, or where the woman is being identified with the gendered body, and she is given as if she is the second subject or she is the other. So women as bodies and men as disembodied self. So how Beer takes a critique of the Cartesian notion through Hegelian dialectic of self and the other. So here I'm not going into the details of the master-slave dialectic because that may take a lot of time. But ma'am has, of course, mentioned about it in her introductory remark. That is Hegel, like the Cartesian notion, of course, he believes he's not interested in the fixed notion, but of course he is believe basically in what's called a dialectic. It's an evolutionary process. So for Bower, the idea body is a perspective, a situation, an alternative to the gender polarity of the masculine disembodiment and feminine enslavement to that body. So in a master-slave dialectic, what happens is first the master is at the center, and the slave is, of course, decentered. But what happens at the end is the slave, it gets empowered. So this kind of a dialectic or an evolution actually happens. So Bova wants to reread or go in take her project in that Hegelian direction or Hegelian dialectic. So the two meanings of, when I say that body is situated, two meanings of body are we have to consider. That is, here body is not a fixed notion. Here body is not something which we always find as if women being attached to body, or a feminine notion, because once we go through the try to critique the very terminologies of body and self, or my man and woman, through the Hegelian dialectical process, of course, we are in fact taking a critique of such concepts. So two meanings of body as situated they occur here. Number one is body as a locus of cultural interpretations, and number two, the body as a situation to take up and interpret that set of received interpretations. So the first one, of course, we all know the body as a locus of cultural interpretations. Perhaps the body is something like a docile body, to speak in the Foucauldian lines. That is, something is inscribed upon the body of a woman. But when I say that body is a situation to take up, so who is to take up? That's the important question. So when I say that I am a woman, of course I am to take up that question of how to interpret the set of received interpretations. So a lot of things are ingrained, or a lot of things are inscribed. So how am I to reinterpret it? Then only the question of, why am I afraid of gender? Why am I afraid of being, say, the society or the culture being, of course, inscribing upon me that I am a woman, or I have, when I say that I'm a woman, of course, always it's something like with a feminine body. Why should I be afraid of it? Why can't I go to the second meaning? Why can't I be some sort of a conscious individual always, not to be in a pre-reflective state? So here I am going a little bit critic of Sartre. Okay, so once body becomes a personal way of reinterpreting the received gender norms, because I am to define myself, I have to set the norms, or I have to determine what my identity has to be, what to use the most appropriate term, I would like to say what my subjectivity has to be. So here comes the very important notion of Butler, and I think it is this particular notion of Bower, that immanence and transcendence, which is perhaps extrapolated later on by Butler and also other feminist thinkers and philosophers of gender. So what is an immanence and transcendence? So gender is a way of existing one's body as a situation, a field of possibilities received and reinterpreted. I would like to explain this immanence and transcendence from the point of view of Sartre, perhaps, because Sartre speaks about what is called facticity and transcendence. Sartre says every human being is condemned to be free. That means even if I want to say that I don't want freedom, of course I have freedom, but it's true that my freedom is conditioned by my birth, my place. So many things are there. So many, when I exist as an individual in this world, there may be a lot of activities, or there may be a lot of things that try to curb my freedom. But of course, man, who is a human being, he is a for itself. It's not in itself, but it's a for itself. So for itself has consciousness, and of course it has freedom. So it has to exercise its freedom and to come out of this facticity. So it has to transcend that facticity. So Bauer also very beautifully explains in her Second Sex how women have to come out of this notion of immanence. That is, we shall never see that this when I chose to become a woman, when I say that when I chose to become a woman, I mean, when really I thought that something is inscribed upon my body as a woman. So this is not something that should act as something which binds me or which is a facticity for me. But of course, I have to transcend that. That is perhaps the beautiful message of, I would like to say, Boer, which is further echoed and beautifully reinterpreted by Judith Butler. And so gender is, of course, a way of existing one's body. So here anatomy does not pose any limits to the gender. So a body is an occasion for meanings. Okay, of course, we can make a deconstructive reading of the body. So who is to do that? I'm to do that. Every human person is to do that. Because I have to determine what my subjectivity is. So a significant absence not only through its significations. So here, signification stands for, of course, meanings, new interpretations, new readings, new understandings. So with this, I move on to one of the last slides. That is, Butter, of course, extrapolates Boer's use. So existing on gender means a reworking of gender. It's a new way of amalgamating the heteronormativity of gender. So beautifully, because we know Butler, she's interested in the question of intersectionality, queer, etc. Because Butler writes not only what's called gender trouble, but she also writes undoing gender. So a new way of amalgamating the heteronormativity of gender. So for that, we have to redefine ourselves, reinterpret ourselves. Maybe some sort of a, what I have told you is sometime earlier, and that is a dislocation or a paradigm shift, which is a kind of a ontological relocation or a recontextualization. So this is what we have to make. So binary oppositions lose clarity. Gender comes as if it's a spectrum. So gender, of course, no doubt. I never disagree with the very standard popular way of saying that gender is culturally sedimented with, means culturally constructed. But gender is a modality of inventiveness, to use a Butlerian language. So it grants the possibility of autonomy. So the body becomes a choice, a mode of reenacting received gender norms. So gender norms are received upon us, but I have to decide, because I have freedom. I have to exercise my freedom. I have to define or redefine myself. I have to interpret or reinterpret myself. So here, both Boer and Butler gives us a chance. And here I take a critique of Sartre once again. And I have to say, I would like to say that it's not that we are in a state of pre-reflective consciousness. We have to be in a state of reflective consciousness, always very conscious of knowing and seeing things, ready to change our views, to be all inclusive, because we claim or we do make a demand that we are developed, or we are in a developed society, and we stand for development. So when I say, we say that we talk about gender and we talk about development, what's the true meaning? So such kind of a perspectival change is that we need to inculcate in our own mindsets. So what is important is a kind of a radical change, or a slow and steady change, perhaps, however the case may be, as with a difference in the perspectives of people, the mindsets of people. Even the essentials can turn to be anti-essentialists, I believe. Okay, because that kind of an openness is that we actually need, because in 2024, when we speak about all these things, we are in a society where we have to go beyond the very notions of masculine and feminine, and we have to adapt and accommodate, and to see that plus LGBTIQA plus. So we have to welcome, and we have to accommodate them also. So our task or our responsibility of reinterpreting gender is only growing day by day. So I end here with a beautiful quotation from Judith Butler. That's which a welcoming note to all people. There are many different theories of gender, and mine is just one, says Butler. So at this point, I'm less concerned about whose theory is right and whose theory is wrong, because the assault on gender is an assault on democracy. So the true index of development shall be such a readiness to take an alternative perspective, or to be more free, to be more open-ended, to be more participatory, and to be more democratic in our views and our perspectives. And that will, in fact, lead us to the true index of development. So with this, I end my lecture here. Thank you once again for all for patiently listening me. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lakshmi, for that very interesting and in-depth presentation on the philosophy of gender. You made it so simple for us that I'm sure that everyone on this platform would have enjoyed listening to you. As you said, this notion of identity is not just a being, but it is a becoming. And this notion of becoming what gender is and what gender means to, say, in 2024. Are we building up a democracy or are we destroying a democracy in the process of development? I think on this note, I'm opening up this session for discussion. And anyone who would like to make comments or ask questions, please join. The floor is now open.
Yeah, can I say something?
Yes.
It was such an exhaustive presentation, Dr. Lekshmi. I'm so happy. I'm so proud of you. You are
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
You are our child, so I'm very happy to see you speak so well. Well, I have one or two things to
Okay, ma'am.
tell you. You've talked about, you're saying that gender is, that is freedom from discrimination and progress towards equality. Can I ask you one question there? Do you see this sort of a thing among the Western society?
This sort of a thing is in the Western society.
In the beginning, you talked about the definition, isn't it? About
yes, ma'am. I think irrespective of whether it is the Eastern society or Western society, such kind of, because everywhere we can see both the essentialists and the anti-essentialists. Those who have got a, by essentialists, I mean some sort of a people with fixed mindsets. Even in our families, we can see, irrespective of their age or something.
Another thing you've talked about is anatomy does not pose any limits to gender. Is it true?
Okay.
I have a question which links up with what Kamini ma'am has just said.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the critiques of course, this is something which we understand, we appreciate, we regard as necessary. But the critique is that this kind of spirited individualism, even the question of choice, is too much of a luxury for the underprivileged woman in a very fixed cultural setting. So how much of choice is there for that kind of woman? Biology still is destiny. We may completely believe in gender as performance, choice, gender development as essential to the development of a country. All of that is fine. But at the more realistic, striking a more realistic note, the ordinary village woman who's born into a certain circumstance. Now, how does she demonstrate spirited individualism by choosing the gender she wants to perform?
Really, I totally agree with what you say, ma'am. That's really an eye-opener, actually, because see, these kinds of discussions are happening only among the academicians or among the allied group. You are because if we take our own society, the Indian society, maybe the Malayali society perhaps may be more progressive, but if we go to the root of the matter, we can see that in an Indian society, especially in the villages, about an average village woman, biology becomes her destiny. So you are right. I think it's here that these kinds of groups or this we philosophers or we academicians, we have to take these kind of perspectives into the village homes, and we have to talk in their language. Maybe, but maybe that will be a very difficult task. But still, at least we can educate them.
As somebody who is extremely interested in education, I mean, I'm trying to do it in my humble way through storytelling, through the kind of stories that we give the next generation. because as uh, psychoanalysts and like Joseph Campbell and all the Jungians have told us, our myths are our destiny. We construct our identity based on those myths. So if we can work through education, through storytelling, then maybe, just maybe, we can bring about a change in thinking. But it has to come very early in life, very, very early in life for both men as well as women. And I mean, that's when you can really talk about equity. And
Yes, yes.
when I'm doing storytelling, for instance, I find that by the age of 3, the gender identities are so crystallized, so crystallized. And then with alternative narratives and all, you try to break it down. So if that could be done through education, I feel that, in my humble opinion, I feel that's just one way out. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I
yes.
totally agree with you. This bringing awareness about the possibilities of choice of one's body, particularly in the villages, and particularly the village children who are not exposed to the kind of thinking that the elite or the what you would say, the intellectual group have. So we really need to go back and create awareness of what the body needs,
Exactly.
why
Right.
cultural values and cultural gendering, as Lakshmi rightly said, the way in which you gender a young child into a process of cultural stasis, and then you don't allow them to grow and find their own identity. In this process of
Absolutely.
becoming, I think education has a major role to play.
Major
And
role to
that's,
play. Just today, I was with a young man from rural West Bengal. And it was so interesting, and even in terms of gender. This man is the youngest principal in the world. At the age of 16, he became a young principal only because he wanted his sisters to learn, and his father refused to let the sisters go to school. Now, I think this is a mindset. This is something we have to really break down and kind of work towards.
correct.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I enjoyed the
Thank you,
discussion.
Bhumi, for joining.
I'm sorry I have to leave because I have another meeting.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Your valuable
Thank you, ma'am.
comments.
Thank you, ma'am.
I see Kuljit Chika here. Would you like to unmute and say something? Yes. You're mute. Please unmute.
It was a wonderful presentation by Dr. Lekshmi, and she has given an entirely different perspective to the definition of gender. Normally, we have been carrying on with the orthodox definition, but she has given a different approach. As far as this Kamani's and just now this lady's question, I would like to say that we have created myths around us. So those myths have to be removed. I can give you the example. For example, we always bring up a girl by saying that she is very delicate. She doesn't have to laugh loudly. She cannot participate in the things which need energy and strength. But I would just, and the girls are very emotional by nature. They cry so easily. Men are not supposed to cry. So they say that आदमी को भी दर्द होता है, मर्द को भी दर्द होता है. So in that context, I would like to say that how these are myths. When is we say that women is not strong and women is weak, I'll give just 2 examples. God has given this blessing to a woman only to produce a child, which is a very, very difficult thing, and men cannot do it because God also thought that women is stronger than man. So we have created a myth around. Second is that the young girls like Mary Kom and her wrestlers recently, how they have won the world through their strength and wrestling and climbing the Himalayas and Everest and everything. And on the other side, the lyricists and the poets like Gulzar and Sahir Ludhianvi, how they have written about the emotions, about love, and about the finer parts of the nature. So this clearly indicates that all those myths have been created, that women is very delicate and man is very strong. It depends how to teach them, how you bring them up. So we have this AIWC in Haryana, we have adopted one village, Sadrana, and Usha is aware of that. When first time we went to that village, the women, they were in Parda. After 5 years of awareness, visiting and everything, they started dancing on the stage when we had an annual meeting in Manesar. So that's we have seen with our own eyes, and how those women, they started fighting for the lease of the land also. They started growing this um, wheat and peas and everything and started selling it directly to the market. All those things which was the domain of the men, they became the power of the women. So it depends how you carry them forward, because women, now we can see that women are everywhere. They're working so hard, they are coming up, and men, they are feeling now little bit, I think, dislocated. So it is the way we deal them, it's the way we bring them up, it's the way, of course, education is very important part, but only education is not going to do the job unless we make them aware about their strength. They are definitely, don't want to compare with men and create that misunderstanding. We are all born equal, we all have our own qualities, we all have our own weaknesses. So we shouldn't try to compare who is stronger and who is superior. We are all born like that, the way we are. As you said in the very beginning, the two persons are not equal. There's a difference, in the difference is the beauty in the community, in the women also. You gave that wonderful introduction as usual. You always, impress me with the new things, always new things to speak about. So we have to appreciate and maintain that we are different. All women are different. You're different from me. So we have to maintain that thing. We don't have to fight for equality, for discrimination, and oppose each other, but live amicably and accept what we are, what are our strengths. Those things have to be brought forward. That's the only thing we can do.
Yeah,
Thank you so
thank
much,
you,
Amita.
Pujiti.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am.
actually, you
Thank
touched the crux of the problem where we are talking about early education. It is not enough with an early education. We need to continually have an education for women to realize that some of the feelings and some of the they call the soft feelings that are only part of a woman, that need to be appreciated rather than to see that as weak qualities. Women have the qualities of caring, of loving, of even crying. It's their emotional outpouring. These are not to be seen as weaknesses, but I think this is the kind of awareness that we need to give the public and to women. And more women should be coming out and talking about these qualities rather than the male keep on saying that these are all weaknesses. Because we have always known that language is patriarchal, especially when we are talking about English language or the European languages. We all have seen that. So I think language at the root of philosophy, as you said, the way in which we communicate, the way in which we try to understand ourselves in terms of thinking, and thinking is always done in terms of language. So how language becomes our potent weapon to fight for women's rights and women's equality and discriminate against discrimination. I think that is what Butler is also trying to say when she says that no woman is totally formed in terms of gender. They are always susceptible to change. It's a process of becoming. Stuart Hall has made that very famous statement, no, identity is not a being, but a becoming. Your identity is not formed once and then there is no change. No, not at all. We all change. So that has also got to, sort I would say, ooze down to the lower sections of society. And they should also be aware of some of this kind of thinking. Very good analysis, Lekshmi, where you talked about these philosophical implications. I think Usha has something to say. I think Indranji had.
Yeah, anybody else wanting to Yeah, I had a couple of questions to Dr. Lakshmi. Teacher, as always, it's a pleasure listening to you. So my question is
Okay,
more.
Avnish.
My question is more on the intellectualization of gender. So we live at a time where there are countless genders: the female, the male, the transgender, the bigender, the gender fluid, the gender neutral. We are in such a postmodern world where if I wish, I can create my own gender. So if we are moving in this direction towards such fluidity, will we reach a point where we will not have any common ground to talk about gender at all? Are we moving towards a direction where gender would become obsolete, or is that our aspiration?
Maybe we have
one.
to wait for a long period, and we have to think of the ground realities as what Madam Kuni has already said. That is, maybe it is. It can be realized. What you say is realizable for only a handful of people, but especially if we take the society like India, what about the village women? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So that is where my
anyway,
next
that's a very
question is. Like,
nice
one more question,
observation.
if you don't mind. So that is where my second question is. Like, gender is a present tense notion, at least for me. It's a daily struggle. It's every moment struggle. What am I, or who am I at this moment? And when we intellectualize it and say that it's a project for the future, it is a never-ending journey. So how does one translate this complex idea of this projected, this fluid, this always fugitive gender concept on a daily basis? How would I translate this theory into experience, this visceral experience on a daily basis? Like, for example, a rural married woman in Uttar Pradesh, let's say, facing physical abuse from her husband, how does she translate this complicated idea of gender into her daily life?
Maybe that's an impossibility. I totally agree with you, Avnish, because we have to take these ideas into the village homes, and we have to educate them, perhaps in their own language. But that's not possible in a day or two. That could be affected. We hope, or perhaps we can hope, we will witness a society, even a society, a UP society or a Bihar society, where such things are not happening.
Can I just join in what you are trying to say? The notion of how a village woman will be educated. One of the things we have seen in Kerala itself is that there was a time when women who were beaten by their husbands never went to police stations and reported because they were afraid. But we are slowly changing, where they are coming to a realization of their rights, that the beating up of the woman by the man is an atrocity that they should fight against and seek legal help. And I think every small step that women are making in order to get to a point where they can say they are on an equal footing, that will take many years, but I think it is still there. Let us think positively. And I think eventually the change will come. Many years maybe, but let us
Okay,
the
yes.
change will come.
Anyway, thank you, Avnish. Avnish is my research scholar.
Oh, good.
He's working on
Thank
SARS.
Working on Satra. Okay.
And I tried to address the question of the deaf subject at the backdrop of Sartrean notion of freedom.
Oh.
Jamila, can I say something, Jamila?
Sure. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
actually, I don't know if you, Lakshmi, remember, we had a sweeper named Rajamma. I don't know if you remember. She was a very nice person. First, she worked in our college, then she was employed by the PTA and all that. The day she retired, her husband died. The office people had given her a very nice send-off, and that day night he died. So after a long time, she came back and she was employed by the PTA too, because she was an excellent worker, you know. Oh, she said, so then Jadamma has always told me that husband really gives her left and right in the night after he drinks, he beats her up and all that. So then I asked her, Rajamma, you must be really happy that your husband is no more because he used to beat you. You know what she said? No, teacher. When he was drunk, I had some male person living at home, and I was happy that I had a protector. But now he's no more, so I feel bad about it, she was saying. You know, that's a woman's attitude, I think. That's a woman's attitude. കുടിച്ചാലും അയാൾ അവിടെ കിടക്കും. He is there, so everybody knows there's one man there. But now he's not there, so I'm scared.
I think that is the mentality with which women grow
Yeah.
up, and the feeling that you need protection, you need male protection to be safe. And considering what our society is today, you cannot blame them also.
You cannot blame them also.
So there's a whole lot of factors go into this
It is,
concept of how free are you. Yes. Anyone else would like to join the discussion?
Yeah, I would like to just make one point.
Yeah.
We have been talking about women, poor women and women, rural women. But I think, that basically we have to work even with the highly educated girls. We have seen, especially in Kerala, we have seen that very highly qualified girls, they face domestic violence, and most of them end up committing suicide. So how is it that they are not able to realize the strength within themselves and realize what is their gender role? So I think, we have to start working with the education system right from school and through right up to colleges, and educate our girls and boys about what Dr. Lekshmi has been telling us, that biology is not destiny. So that is something that we have to tell our young boys and girls, so that they understand that just by being biologically a girl doesn't mean that you have to be submissive, you have to suffer all the atrocities, and you cannot speak out, or that you are physically very weak, so you cannot react. So I think academicians like you, Dr. Jamila, Dr. Lekshmi, Dr. Kamini, all of you can really, come together and prepare some sort of action plan, which we, like AIWC, we can take up and start having some sessions right from the schools, where we can tell them about these differences, what are the differences and what are the similarities, and where we should focus. I think that may be something that can make a good project for us, and which will do really, good for the young men and women who are taking up major roles in life now.
Yeah, you're right, Usha.
Good
Okay.
idea.
Jamila, shall I say something?
Yes, please.
Recently, as Usha has correctly said, recently there was a survey about this domestic violence.
Ah.
82% of women from Karnataka and 75% from Madhya Pradesh,
Oh.
they said that man has got every right to beat the women because
yeah.
she is his property.
Yeah.
So unless we change this mindset,
Yeah.
I don't think that we'll be able to create the type of society we wish to create.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah.
that awareness has to be given that man has got no right. We are not man's property. We are separate individuals, whether we are married or unmarried. So that doesn't mean that the man has got the right to beat the wife. If he wants to say something or make any message, give any message, there are other polite ways also doing like that. So
Yeah,
women also accept that there is no harm if the man is hitting us. So that mindset has to be changed.
I have also felt always, like particularly when the feminist movement came, there was a kind of anti-masculinity to it, and saying that we are feminists, we are fighting for our rights and things like that. I think it's time that, particularly with Judith Butler's notion, I was reading up some of her works where she talks also about gender strength, the strength of women in any society, and she talks about how it is possible to create a consciousness about one's body and one's rights without actually making an antithetical to something or antithetical to the male. And that is what we have found always, like men resist any kind of women's organizations coming in to bring in awareness among the village people. Many organizations have found they always meet with a lot of opposition from the male group when they think that here is a NGO that is coming to change the mindset of the women against them. So I think slowly we have to get out of that and get them to realize that we are only talking about the woman's self and not saying this is all you can do. These are the many things that are possible. This is the way you should live. This is the way you have a freedom of choice for yourself. So I think this kind of awareness has to come from the grassroots and even among, I would say,
among educated, urban,
yeah,
also.
Not just children, but also the teenagers.
And maintain a balance when you're creating awareness. Don't have to talk against men and boys.
Yeah.
Because it's one of my programs,
Ah.
I mean, the mixed boys and girls were there for gender sensitization. In the end, the boys told me this thing. They said, ma'am, you are always talking in favor of the girls. Do you hate the boys? Then I realized that I have to balance my speech when I'm talking to this young people. Don't say talk against men, but teach them how to lead their life in a very respectful way. Isn't it?
Yeah, very true, very true, very true. It is
I
interesting.
can see that two people have unmuted, Shah Menon and Lakshmi Bai. If you want to say something.
Thank you very much, madam, for this such an informative talk. I enjoyed hearing all discussions and talk by Lakshmi, madam. Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Lakshmi Bai. Lakshmi Bai, please unmute and then talk. Chika Mitra is here. Would you like to? Yeah, Lakshmi is unmuting. Please go ahead.
Oh, she's again muted.
Yeah, she's again muted. Shika, would you like to contribute to the discussion?
I think if there are no further comments or questions, would you like to give our future program now that this Women's Day series is over?
Yeah.
What next?
The 3 lectures that we had on the women series has been well accepted, and we have in fact gained a lot of insight, not just on developing programs for women, but we have also looked at the concept of women. Thank you, Lakshmi, for that very insightful reading of what a woman is and how she is placed in society and how she can get out into a world where she can make her choices. Thank you. Thank you. It was a very, I would say, interesting and thoughtful lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful insights and then for your valuable comments. The very nice discussion we had by Dr. Kamini, then all other participants. And thank you, Avnish. Thank you, ma'am, once again. Thank you, Usha, ma'am, for inviting me and giving me such a wonderful chance. But I feel an added responsibility that we have to take all these things right to the heart of the society. We should do something. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And I would also like to let everyone who have joined here and all our members that the series of 3 lectures is done. And next month, we will be going back to our G20 countries And we have got the confirmation from Dr. Leila Das to talk on France. So finally, we are coming to France after many postponements of that particular lecture. So next week, not next week, next usual time, that is the first Saturday of April. I think that is
6th of April.
The 6th of
6th of
April.
April.
Yeah, 6th of April, we will be having a talk on France, and Dr. Leila Das will be giving it. So I hope all of you will join us for that session. And thank you very much. Thank you to AIWC for giving me this opportunity to floor this online program for so many months. I think we are slowly moving to the 40 mark, and maybe in another 10 months we'll reach 50, and then we'll have a big celebration. So we're looking forward to it, and a continuing support from all of you who have joined us here. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Usha.
Thank you, ma'am.
We wish you all the best. Wish you all the best. Okay, Lekshmi.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
And I would also like to add that in addition to taking forward the G20 series, we would also be having webinars on other interesting topics. And if any of you want to suggest any topic or suggest any theme, we would be happy to take it under the Literary and Cultural Forum. And for Dr. Lekshmi, I think you have not attended any of our previous webinars. We have been having this series for more than 3 years now, and on various topics. So currently, when G20, when India assumed the presidency of G20, we started a series on the culture and literature of the G20 countries. And we have already covered, how many have we covered, Jamila?
We have covered 29, I think.
No, that's wonderful.
Out of 20, yeah, we have covered many countries, but still I think 4 or 5 are left. We will be continuing that, and we'll complete that series. And like that, we have had on different topics and different themes. And we would like you also to be associated with All India Women's Conference. It is an All India organization with central office in New Delhi, 98-year-old organization. We have branches all over the country. And we have many branches in Trivandrum as well. Since you're based in Trivandrum, we would like you to become a member of AIWC and help us in doing our programs. I'm sure, I am sure that you may not have much time, but still, as Dr. Jamila, Dr. Kamini, they are all very active in our branches, and we have been doing programs together. So we would be looking to you also for your help and advice. And thank you so much for that very interesting lecture, because gender and sex, gender, all these have been very abstract concepts and very difficult to explain in very simple terms, which you have done very successfully. And we all got, I'm sure, we all got new insights into the topic and how you have linked gender with development. And now that we are all working on the development agenda, that will be really helpful. And this is a message that we can carry into our programs and convey to all our members and other people who are associated with us. Thank you so much. Thank you, Jessica, for your leadership in taking this forward, this literary and cultural forum. Actually, this is the 40th session, I think. Last time we had mentioned it as 38, it was actually 39, and now this is the 40th session. We are nearing the 4-year mark. And as you said, when we reach 50, we'll definitely have a big celebration of this. And thank you, Dr. Kamini, for co-hosting the session with me. And thank you all my friends of AIWC and from outside AIWC who have joined, and especially the persons who have made the discussions very lively, like Kuljit, and Umi has left, but she also for the very interesting insights that you have brought into the discussions. Thank you so much. So we'll hope to see you all again on 6th of April with for another very interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lekshmi.
Bye-bye, Lekshmi. Take care.